You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Stacking Benjamins is not for everyone. Side effects may include euphoria, increased ability to meet your goals, and aggression from people wondering, quote, what the hell your secret is. Stacking Benjamins may be habit-forming, especially if you stick around for the entire episode. Wink, wink. Please check with your doctor to see if Stacking Benjamins is right for you.
Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and while your neighbors are busy fighting with each other on social media, let's be neighborly and help you invest in your community with today's mentor, Mel Dorman. You've heard her TED Talk, and now she's here to teach you real estate. In our headline segment, last month, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time in practically forever. Hyperbole? Oh, that was a gajillion% hyperbole. But here's what's not hyperbole. We're going to tell you what the Fed rate changes mean for your money, so you know how to tweak your financial dashboard. But that's not all. Of course, I'll also share some ear-popping trivia. That sounds uncomfortable. And now, 2 guys who love their current real estate deal with Joe's mom. It's Joe and OG.
Told you 1,000 times, Doug, don't say that so loud. We can't remind mom ever what a sweet, sweet real estate deal we've got podcasting for free in the basement. Hey there, stackers. Happy Wednesday to you. We're so happy you're here. Grab a piece of paper because this is going to be a good one, whether you're interested in real estate or not right now. You know what? Negotiating deals is a part of our life, our everyday life, and Mel Dorman's going to help us do that today. But a guy who's going to help us through this entire episode today is here across the card table from me, Mr. OG, reporting for duty at the basement. How are you, man?
I prefer the term rent controlled. Isn't that price controlled rent or something? Isn't that?
Well, the bad news is mom is like the city council or the whatever in this analogy.
Well, it's controlled at 0 so far.
Well, yeah, we got to make sure that she keeps it at 0. So
I'm glad we joined the rent is too damn high party.
It's a good day when you get that one line item. You know, they say what, guys? They say control the 3 things, right?
Yeah.
Your housing cost, your auto cost, and your grocery.
Your hair.
And if we can make one of those 0 and your hair, which none of us have done a good job. I'm looking at.
What are you talking about? This is like a.
I think I'm doing stellarly.
It's like a main compared to you 2 idiots.
If we're trying to get rid of all the
alleys
hair,
I've got.
Power alleys. Is that what we start referring them to as?
Yes.
I don't want to come over because I got my power alley.
Yeah.
Pretty soon the show's going to be sponsored by Nutrafol. Chia Pets.
Remember at one point Nutrafol did sponsor our show.
I never got any samples, so
no idea why they went away. That was
clearly none of us did.
Maybe 10 years ago. Speaking of sponsors, we've got a couple sponsors to make sure we can keep on keeping on. You don't pay any money for today's great show with Mel, and also talking about interest rates and how interest rates work, the Interest Rate 101 show. So we're going to hear from them. And then coming down, she's starting to come down to the basement right now, Mel Dorman getting ready to join us. She had a TEDx talk that you may have seen because this thing went viral. And today she's going to share her story with us. You may not know that when we started Stacking Benjamins, it was a blog. And even then, just the startup cost, I remember thinking, is this the right thing? And what if I write things and nobody comes, right? Well, luckily, that didn't end up happening. But starting something new isn't just hard. It's terrifying. There's so much work. You're not sure whether it's going to work out. You're not sure if anybody's going to read it. And then we changed it to a podcast. Is anybody actually going to listen, right? What if nobody wants all the stuff that we have? Well, had I used Shopify, it would have been even easier because with their expertise, their helpful tools, and their easy to use platform, that's something that would have made Stacking Benjamins more effective much, much more quickly. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Names you've heard of like Heinz and Mattel, Shopify, Gymshark, Aviator Nation, Allbirds, also all Shopify. Get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. And did I mention that iconic purple Shop Pay button? It's used by millions of businesses around the world. It's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. It also helps boost conversions, meaning less carts going abandoned and more sales for you. So you're stacking Benjamins much more quickly. Time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/SB. Go to shopify.com/SB. That's shopify.com/SB.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Oh, Stackers, I love a great story about community and creativity. Mel Dorman's here to tell it. How are you?
I'm doing so good, Joe. How are you doing this morning?
I am good too. And it's so funny as I'm getting to know you, I just feel like we're singing off the same song sheet. You are all about community and helping your neighbor.
Absolutely. I love it.
I'm not sure where to start. Do we start with you dumpster diving? Do we start with, I love it. What did you say in your TEDx talk? You were turning garbage into charcuterie?
Yeah, debris into charcuterie.
That's right. So good. Is there a key when you're dumpster diving to doing it right?
You know, at that time, it was about going around 1 or 2 in the morning, right when the night manager was leaving and they were done with their shift. And then, get in and out as fast as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And not starving. I mean, you're dumpster diving because you have no money.
Yeah, at that time, we graduated in 2009. So most students who graduated didn't have any money. So we were making ends meet. And honestly, we ate like kings and queens. Like Trader Joe's throws a lot of good stuff away.
Well, and you even said in your TED Talk, which we'll link to in the show notes, you had like a methodology. There was a bunch of stuff that the expiration date hadn't even come by yet.
Yeah. We were getting steaks that would expire like 3 or 4 days later. So we just stick them in the freezer, and we had an entire meat freezer, which, I mean, which college grads do you know had an entire steak freezer?
And all from Trader Joe's.
All Trader Joe's. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. It's funny, Stackers, because I know when OG and I were talking about you coming down that we were going to talk about seller financing, and you're like, what the hell are we talking about dumpster diving? But it all is this idea that initially you're struggling, you're dumpster diving. Why did you go to Africa?
My undergrad, I was a global studies major. And so I went there to teach English and to study on HIV/AIDS. So it was really part of my curriculum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how long were you there?
I lived there for 4 months. Yeah. In a rural village and then in a slum in the city of Kampala.
I want to get to the Robert Kiyosaki part of this in a second, which we'll get to, everybody. But before we do that, what else did you learn in Africa? Because I feel like that type of experience could teach you so much.
I learned a lot there, but I'd say a lot of my more formative international development work was when I lived in India, in Kolkata, India, helping women out of sex trafficking.
Oh,
That
no.
was illuminating just to see how, all these women had been trafficked, but they were stuck there because they couldn't pay the pimps off the money they owed for having been stolen from their family and told that they owe this debt now. And so that was the first time I really saw how debt could control people's lives.
Wow. Oh, that's horrible.
Hmm.
Cheryl, my spouse, did part of her training in Mumbai, and she was
Oh, wow.
working at a children's hospital where most of these children did not have families,
Hmm.
and just very similarly
Yeah.
ugly story, completely different stories than your stories, but similar. And she loved it, by the way. She loved India so much.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. The people are so generous and kind, and I learned a ton about international development that actually really informs my practice now with seller financing.
That's funny. I'm going to ask you about that because I can't figure out how the hell that would how would
Well,
that translate? But before we get there, so you're in Africa. You've graduated in 2009. You're seeing how evil banks can be and a lot of capitalist stuff that's falling down can be. So I would bet that would help make me kind of negative. Then you're seeing all these people in this income disparity, and that would make you negative. And then you're in Africa, and this kid shows you this Robert Kiyosaki book.
yeah.
What happened there?
Yeah, so I'm living with this rural family in the middle of nowhere in Kampala. I'm the only white person. And most people are scared. They've never seen a white person before. So I'm this anomaly. And I remember one day the 16-year-old cousin comes over and he's holding this book and he's like putting in my face, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. So I pick it up and it says Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I flip over the cover and I'm like, oh, this is another American book about making money. Those selfish Americans, I want nothing to do with them. The kid was like begging me, please keep it for like 2 weeks. I'll come back and you can just read it during that time. And I said, no, I was like so principled. And I just gave it back to him. I was such a fool.
Well, I don't know. I mean, on one side, yes, but it was how many years later then that your dad started to have issues?
Yeah. So like speed up about 7 years later, I graduated college. I had lived in India. I had done all this work and I came back having done international development work, helping people in third world countries, coming back to the United States and realizing that I was the financially disempowered one because my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's as a 67-year-old and he was the
67,
breadwinner.
so young.
Yeah. Hmm.
I have friends that we found out that she had Alzheimer's maybe 8 months ago. And then I found out just a few weeks ago that he has Alzheimer's, this beautiful
Goodness.
couple in our community, and they have no children to take care of them. But you're tasked with helping to take care of your dad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a 23-year-old. I had $10,000 in my checking account. And I thought, okay, well, my parents have some sort of retirement, right? No, they were like 60% of Americans just living paycheck to paycheck, no plan. And the doctors told us it was going to cost $7,000 a month to take care of my dad, to have home care. And so, we ended up doing something that was really challenging. My sister had lost her house in the 2008 housing crisis. And so she was living on the streets. She had developed a drug addiction. And so my family, trying to solve two problems at once without the safety nets that we used to have in our society, we had my sister, who was drug addicted and homeless at the time, move in and take care of my dad for the last few years of his life. And that really shook me. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
What was your net worth at this time?
Like $20,000 maybe. I had nothing.
So here you are. You're trying to come up with $7,000 a month to help your dad. Your sister has issues. You definitely have seen the worst of the crisis. What flips the switch for Mel and changes things?
So after I found out my dad had Alzheimer's, it took 7 years before he passed away. So right away this is going to sound so funny, but I was a social worker at LA County Jail. So you can imagine during the day I'm processing inmates, doing mental health care. And in between, I would just be reading books from like Bigger Pockets or listening to podcasts or just everything I could get my hands on. And 20 hours a
But
week,
how do you choose?
I educated
Wait a minute,
myself.
hold on. How do you choose Bigger Pockets though? Because I can't imagine a social worker who seems to be very anti a lot of capitalist ideas. Rich people are evil. All of a sudden, how the hell are you reading Bigger Pockets?
After I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I finally picked up that book.
Okay.
And I was sitting in the jails going, okay, well, how am I going to help my family? Once I realized real estate was such an accessible way to build wealth, naturally, Bigger Pockets was a free and accessible resource for me. So I just listened to 300 episodes while I was sitting in jail as a social worker, not as an inmate. But I just listened to everything I could get my hands on. And by the time I got done with all those episodes, I had a pretty good understanding of what could go wrong and how to make it go a little more right.
And not only are not all rich people evil, I think some rich people are evil. Some poor people are evil.
Totally.
But it depends on how you use your wealth.
Yeah.
And now you've got this really what I think of when I think of Bigger Pockets, and especially then, I think they still are now, but then just such a giving community.
Yes.
Like all these people just giving all this information, steering people clear of a lot of the shysters in real estate. But you still have this issue. You're in social work, not making a ton of money, Mel. How do you afford to buy a first property then to get this thing rolling?
While I was working in the jail for that year, I did overtime and I saved up about $50,000, which was remarkable for a social worker. And I started sending out direct mail letters when I moved to Portland. And about 3 months into it, I got a call from a woman, and she was an out-of-state realtor. She wanted to work directly with me. And since I was a very broke buyer, that was not very competitive. So we talked about doing an FHA loan at the time. I was absolutely shocked. So I had no real estate knowledge locally for Portland when I moved up there. I didn't know what anything was worth. I was shocked to find out when the appraisal came back that it was $50,000 more than I was paying for it.
Oh.
And that opened my eyes. I was like, whoa, $50,000 is what a social worker makes in a year. Like, it was absolutely amazing. And so that really changed my mind about real estate, that it was a very accessible way to build wealth.
Wow. But you realize buying this first one that it's going to be a long slog if you keep doing it that way.
Yeah. And they made like 150,000. They flipped it over 2 years. They were super excited too. So nobody was getting gouged. But yeah, it made me realize that money really matters. My family was going through this crisis, and if I was going to accelerate my timeline and help them, I needed to figure out how to make money in a much faster way. And so, off-market properties seemed like a great way to do it.
This is when I start to get excited, because as our stackers know, real estate excites my son. It excites a lot of people in my community. I think it's a great way to build wealth. It's just not for me. But the next thing that you decide to do excites the hell out of me. So you find this guy, and I'm looking through my notes here, Kelly. You find this guy named Kelly. Tell me about you and Kelly and you starting to explore this idea of seller financing.
Yeah, so let me just back up a little bit.
Okay.
Like right after I bought that first duplex, I was ecstatic. I was going to tell my family, and I was going to be this hero and solve the problem, right?
Right.
At least for a year. Right after I closed on that property, my sister called me and told me my dad was dying. I was just shocked, and I did something really radical. I quit my day job as a social worker, and I had about $16,000 in my checking account at the time. But the reason I felt so emboldened was I just learned about seller financing, and I knew it was a way that I could build relationships in my community to build wealth. And even though I didn't have any money or a job, I knew that I could do that.
Wow. No emergency fund.
$16,000.
We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Not something I recommend to your audience, but that's what I did.
No, but isn't it wild how there's these dramatic times in your life that change everything? That should just change your complete outlook. And it seems like the switch must have flipped going, you know what? I got to do this.
Yeah, watching my dad clock in for 50 years of his life with nothing to show for it. It's like the American dream crumbled in front of me, and I realized that it was this facade that it's not going to work out anymore if you just keep clocking in the rest of your life. And I didn't want that to be my life. I wanted to work for like 5 more years and have financial independence. So that's what I set out to do after that point.
You wrote this in your book, and it's very true today. Part of what I like that you wrote was you realize nobody's coming for you. You look at all the vitriol happening in Washington, D.C. You look at the chaos of, with politicians around our country. They're not coming to help.
No,
there is nobody coming to help. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah. And your corporate job or even your government job that feels secure and stable, it's really not. And the only thing that you can control is what you do in the world. And I wanted to learn a way to create value for other people and solve their problems. And I knew if I could do that really well, that the money would eventually follow.
It's so exciting that you decide that your community is the answer, not just to your issues, but maybe to your community's issues. Like bringing people together can help lift all ships, I guess. So does that bring us to Kelly? Are we?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kelly, because this, as you can tell, I'm a little excited, Mel.
Yeah, I wanted to just give you that backdrop so you could see how desperate and poor I was when I met Kelly.
well, and not just poor, but I could also think, despondent and disillusioned.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of people are. How do you meet Kelly?
So I'm sending letters to strangers. I'm cold calling about 10 hours a week. And one day, this guy, Kelly, answers the phone. And I say, Kelly, do you know who Joe is? And he says, well, Joe's dead. And he used to be my client. I'm a bankruptcy attorney. And so I thought I was in trouble. Like, oops, I'm talking to the wrong guy.
Gotta go.
Yeah. But he was so sweet over the phone. He actually asked me to meet up for drinks later. He was hanging out with a few friends. And he's a 65-year-old guy from Manhattan, married, straight. I'm a queer lesbian from Portland. Like we're very different
Two
here.
people very much the same.
Yeah. And so we grabbed drinks that night and we really just developed a friendship and we stayed in touch. And about 3 months into the friendship, he texts me, hey, I got a triplex I'd like to sell. Could you do an evaluation on it? And I had been a realtor for about 5 minutes, so I could do that. And so I met up with him and we walked the property. And he said to me before I could even say anything, he says, I'd like to seller finance this to somebody. And it was like, oh my gosh, manifestation right then and there. I had been saying that to myself every morning. I'm trying to find a seller finance property. And here he was saying it back to me. And it was like magic.
How much did he want for the property?
I did the evaluation. I said it was worth about $725.
Okay.
If he had a realtor, maybe $750 because they got to pay the realtor fees. But working together directly, it'd just be $725. And of course, he wanted 10% down, right? $75,000. So I was thinking, no way. I have like $8,000 in my checking account at this point.
16 is now gone to 8. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, quick on my feet. I asked him, well, what would it cost you to foreclose on me? And he thought about it and he was an attorney. So he said, well, about $15,000. I said, great. That's all you need then, right? If I don't pay you, you can just use $15,000 of my money and foreclose on me. And he saw the logic and he agreed.
And then I'm sure everybody walking the dog right now, listening to us, Mel, is going, okay, but she doesn't have $15,000.
Yes, exactly.
You're a great negotiator, but you still can't do it.
Exactly. So I left that meeting that night and went, okay, I better pick up the phone. I'm going to rely on my community again. And I called through about maybe 5 or 6 people and I found some lesbian friends of mine and they lent me $10,000 in a second position lien for an entire year. So when I got to closing, I only needed $7,000, which I had technically. And so it was $5,000 for the remainder down payment and $2,000 for the closing cost. But I had another little hiccup. I had a lot of hiccups as a buyer here.
Okay.
I realized that 2 of the units were vacant. So I told Kelly, how am I going to pay you in a couple days when I got no money coming in for that mortgage? And so we agreed to give me a 2-month delay on the first payment, which allowed me. Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. You can't do that with a bank, right?
No.
So, and so we just added those 2 payments to the principal. So he was making interest on interest. He's very happy. I ended up recouping $6,500 of that $7,000 in those 2 months, which meant I was all in $500 on a triplex in Portland, Oregon, in a great neighborhood.
And from then on, it just gets better every month.
Yeah. It was cash flowing right away, about $200 because we did interest only payments, which is a big unlock in seller financing for both the buyer and the seller. So I had plenty of money to pay the seller and to pay my friends in the second position. And after a year, it was cash flowing about $1,100 a month.
Wow. Is that after maintenance cost? Is that all in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all in. Yeah, taking good care of the tenants through that process. Yep.
So 50,000 questions about this, Mel, that people are going to have. Number one is, a bank wouldn't have done any of that. And you point this out in your book on this topic, which we'll give people that in the show notes as well and talk about it at the end of our discussion. But a bank's not going to let you do that. Why would he let you do that when there's so many people out there right now? There's, Wells Fargo is going out buying up these communities. Why wouldn't Kelly just sell to them, maybe make more money? Why is he going to mess around selling to you and giving you 2 months free ride before things pick up?
I think there's a misconception here that he would make more money if he sold that way, just like a cash buyer or even just somebody with a home loan, honestly, like a regular bank loan. Because the way the math works out is I end up paying him over $250,000 in interest over 7 years. So he's not making $725,000. He's making $1 million on that property. And had he sold it the traditional way, he would have been left with about $560,000 after taxes. And he'd have to go reinvest that at a 9% rate to try to beat what I was paying him at 5.5% interest. seller financed.
You're getting yourself in the game and you're making him more money.
Exactly. Yeah, he's saving on taxes. He's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. He gets to move from being the landlord to the lender, which is what's most lucrative.
Now, he's a smart guy. He's a bankruptcy attorney, so he's dealt with numbers his whole life. But how easy is it to draw that picture for the average person now that you're dealing with this on a wider, broader scale?
You know, the amazing thing is there are millions of boomers out there that were around during the 70s and 80s when interest rates were 17, 18, 19%. So a lot of boomers actually have a working memory of either buying seller financed or knowing somebody at that time who did that. And so it's not necessarily that you're convincing them, you're just finding the people that already know, and then they already understand the advantages of it, and it's just partnering with them.
You make it very clear. You have to be a very trustworthy person for this to work.
Absolutely. At the basis of this is financial literacy. And this is not about taking advantage of folks. This is not about getting one over or buying a property with little money and no credit. I mean, yes, you can do all those things, but at the end of the day, you have to be responsible because you're working with a community member. And that's even more important than if you're working with a bank because they are relying on you.
It's going to be somebody who's going to be your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And potentially these are people that know people. And now it makes seller financing easier, because that is my next question, Mel. How do you find likely people? You said at one point, I think in your book, that initially you were sending out flyers and doing mail campaigns and all kinds of stuff. But really, what has worked for you the best in finding the right who, as you put it, to talk to about seller financing deals?
I think that direct mail, what I call love letters, is what I send out. So imagine like what you'd get from your grandmother on your birthday. Looks like a birthday card. It's hand addressed. It's even hand signed, got a cute stamp. Maybe it's got Santa or a bouquet of flowers or something. So the open rate is really high. And all it is introducing yourself as a neighbor. Like, I want to get to know you. I'd like to talk about your property. Maybe you're not ready to sell now, but at one point I'd like to be that person. And it's really just a building of a relationship. It's not very much about the property. It's more about the person.
You got to be targeting a group of people, though. Where do you find your targeting list?
Yeah, I reach out to local escrow companies and I ask them if they can create a list of either single families or multifamilies that haven't been sold in the last 10 years, have a lot of equity. They have a variety of ways of finding who has equity in their home.
Okay, but I'm sure they don't give you that for free. Is it inexpensive to pay for?
I mean, I develop relationships with my escrow company, so it is free for me. And because I know that they're going to be my escrow officer when I actually close the transaction. So they're happy to provide that information for me.
This is the important, stackers, of getting into your community and being a valuable member of a community. Mm-hmm. Have you seen, there's this movie that I love, Mel. It's called Join or Die. Have you seen this movie?
I haven't yet, but I've heard great things.
We had the producers on back in late June, early July. It's the idea of what you're talking about. You're using social capital to dig in and be a part of a community. I can't imagine escrow people giving you that list for free. It seems like a very valuable list, but if you know the people and they know you and they know you're going to help build this community, that's a powerful place to be.
Yeah. And of course there's, softwares online too that you can get these lists from for pretty cheap too. But yeah, I prefer to do everything relationally. I want to know my tenants. I want to know everybody that's on my team, my CPA, my bookkeepers. It's a team sport.
When you say you want to know your tenants, a lot of real estate people used to have a real estate podcast for a hot minute. And when we did, a lot of landlords would tell me that they're a sucker for a good sob story. And it's so hard to go, no, you got to pay your rent this month. No, I can't have the excuse for the third month. Like, do you really want to get to know your tenants?
Yeah, for me, it really paves the relationship when those things happen. Folks will lose their jobs. That's just part of life. And so I find that if I'm showing up, day one with a gift in my hand and I'm shaking their hand, getting to know them, and they feel that they have a comfortable relationship with me, when those things happen, it's more of a conversation. And usually I'm saying, okay, you got about 2 months of a security deposit to burn through, but then you got to move out. I don't want to evict you. Why don't you try your hardest to get a roommate or get a job? But if you can't, then let's just try to find you somewhere else to live. And when I give that grace, it's always been reciprocated with them actually moving out if they can't do the task, right? I find that, again, it's just about community and relationships. And when you invest in that social capital with your tenants, then they're much more amenable when you need them to pull through too.
Oh, that's so kick-ass. When you're setting up this seller financing deal, I want to go back to the initial deal because there's a few things here I think that our stackers won't understand. Number one is if you go to a bank, you probably have a 15-year or 30-year loan. I mean, there's a few crazy loans out there, but not many. And you could do an ARM. But you make a great point, which is You can structure this however the hell you want. It's just between you and the buyer. Tell me about some of the different terms that you've used on some of these seller financing deals.
Oh, goodness. We're going to get into some good stuff here. So, we talked about interest only payments. That's a huge unlock. It drops the payment by about a third. So, all of a sudden, you're cash flowing. It helps the seller because they're not paying taxes and capital gains. So, they get to delay that and make interest on that money instead.
You have to point this out to them, though, right? You have to say, this is good for you because it's going to help you at tax time.
Sometimes, I mean, a lot of them are trying to avoid that. And if they have an understanding of seller financing, they know that's one of the big perks of it. I'd say, I also include what's called a remainder beneficiary. So if they were to pass away, it's their ability to hand off that baton, that payment, that revenue source to somebody else, which is a big legacy piece for sellers. I would also say that I put in a first right of refusal. So should they want to sell the note early, let's say it's a 10-year note, but they want to sell in year one, I want to have the ability to buy my own debt back. The reason is because often you have to sell it at a discount, and I want to be the one who gets that discount. So I put that in there as well. And then I get really creative, and this is the fun part. But I put some terms in there that allow me to take a promissory note, let's say it's $1 million, and I can chop it into multiple pieces, like 100,000 and 100,000 times 10 or whatever, or 200,000 times 5. And then I can move those pieces of debt to other real pieces of my property. And that creates equity, and I can do things like cash out refinances or sell and, make that money. So it's quite, I see your face right now. You're like, what are we talking about?
I'm like, how does that work? Slow down a second, Mel. So you take this one big note and you chop it into smaller notes.
Yeah, I'll give you a case example. Let's say it's Monday and you're buying a house from a seller financed for $300,000, and they give you fantastic terms like 2% down, 2% interest rate, 20 years, right? It's amazing. But you don't like the house. The house is a wreck and you don't like flipping houses. So Monday night, you call your friend and you say, hey, flipper friend, would you like to flip this house? Could you buy it for $300,000? They say yes. So the next day you could move that promissory note to another property that you own. Your friend could then buy that property for $300,000, the flip house. And on Thursday, you get $300,000 of cash, tax-free.
Bang. Wow. How did you come up with that?
I studied seller financing. I studied
deeply, apparently.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about having a debt strategy versus just having debt, Mel. And CFOs of companies, they have a debt strategy. They will find the best terms that they can get, and then they will manipulate those terms as much as they can, where the average person out there just goes, oh, I feel like putting extra on this one random credit card. If you're going to be the CFO of your life, you really have to think through what's my overall debt strategy. Is there an opportunity here to get in over your head, though?
Oh, absolutely. Real estate is something I like to think about it like flying a plane or becoming a doctor. You are working with massive numbers. You're dealing with housing, which are real people's lives. To learn that type of technical knowledge, you should take the time to read books and listen to podcasts and learn from experts and get coaching, because you can either learn your lessons by paying a coach or a program, or you can learn them in the streets when you lose $50,000 on your first flip or something. It's an investment that's important to make up front.
How much money is your typical closing cost then?
Oh yeah, about $2,000.
Wow.
So, with a bank, it's like, if you have a $500,000 loan, you're probably paying $12,000, and there's going to be an appraisal fee, and there's going to be an underwriting fee, and there's going to be all of these hands, collecting that $12,000. But with a real estate attorney, it's about a 5-page document. It's a promissory note and a deed of trust. And the promissory note is just spelling out the details of the agreement, and the deed of trust is just securing it to the real piece of property so you can't run off to Mexico and sell it. It's a very simple document, and it's actually, when you look at a mortgage with a bank, it's like a 30-page, really, really crazy document that has lots of teeth and lots of scary words.
Every property I bought is 50,000 words, and the person having you sign it doesn't walk you through it. They're just sign here, sign here, sign here.
Yeah, and we all do, but those are the bank's attorneys, and I'd prefer to hire my own so that we can really make it whatever we want it to be.
That is really interesting. You make this great point of, with a bank, the terms are locked. With seller financing, the terms are flexible, and you can agree on what helps you and your neighbor that you're purchasing from. You can help both of you by putting together the terms that work best for you. Closing cost fairly high through banks. And if they're not high, you're going to pay for it in a higher interest rate, right? If you go with a zero cost loan, they're going to make their money somehow. Here, it's $2,000. That's it. There's maybe 10 more ways that seller financing beats traditional bank loans. I mean, think about this. You get 3/4 of the way through this transaction and it doesn't work. You'll lose your earnest money. You lose your appraisal stuff. You flush all this money down the toilet and you end up with nothing if it goes bad, if the deal goes bad. And yet that doesn't have to be the case on a seller financing deal. And yet you write, we think, or maybe you didn't write this, maybe this was my interpretation of what you wrote. We think a seller financing is kind of sketchy and whatever, but you're like, but look at this banking system.
Yeah. I'm like,
how sketchy is this banking?
Most people don't realize that because of the 2009 housing crisis and the bank failures, every man, woman, and child lost $70,000 of lifetime earning potential. And I don't know about you, but when people have lost me $70,000, I don't like to give them more of my money. The banking system has let us down, but our neighbors were so afraid of each other. But really, I mean, this is a much more practical way to build wealth and to do it in such a way that we keep wealth in our communities rather than sending our payments off to big banks and institutions.
If you want to dive into this, I did after I heard Mel's story about coming from someone who was dumpster diving to 35 properties and it was 35 properties or 35 doors in 5 years.
Yeah, 34 units in 5 years.
34 units in 5 years. That's crazy. And your experience in Africa and just hearing how you went from somebody who thought that all this was evil to somebody who thought I can merge community and creativity and make sure that everybody gets what they want. What a powerful place to be. Mel's book on the topic is called Bank on Your Neighbor, People First Real Estate Strategy to Build Wealth Together. It just came out last month in September. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, Mel, everybody can get it everywhere?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Still getting it into Barnes & Noble and that sort of places. But yeah, Amazon it's widely available. And I actually put it in podcast form. So if anybody wants to listen to it in the car, you can go to Spotify or Apple or any other place you can find it. That
was awesome when I opened up the book and you're like, you know what? The best way to learn is not just by reading. It's all these different inputs, which you did while you were at the jail.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mel, thanks for being such a great mentor for us today. I love talking community and congratulations on all the success.
Oh, thank you so much, Joe. This was amazing.
Hey there, Stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and today we celebrate the birthday of the lead singer of a band whose top song you still hear at stadiums across America to this day. That's right, the band was called Kool and the Gang, and after their first big hit, Ladies' Night, hit number 1 in 1979, they followed it up with the wedding and stadium crowd pleaser called Celebration. Here's a question about our birthday boy. What was the lead singer's name? I'll be back in a moment with your answer, and we can all throw our hands in the air like we just don't care.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada? Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in houseplants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Hey there, stackers. I'm the guy ready to have a good time and also the guy who knows it's always ladies' night, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Kool and the Gang were a band that was hard to classify. Sure, they created pop music, but their sounds also fused funk, soul, and straight-up R&B. The lead singer of the band is celebrating his birthday today. Here's the question, what's his name? If you said, well, duh, Kool, it's like Kool and the Gang, so his name must be Kool, right? Yeah, sure, you'd be correct. But his full name is Robert Kool Bell, and he celebrates his 75th birthday today, and he's a huge fan of the show. Probably. Happy birthday, Kool! I'm sure you'll celebrate all day long. And now back to two guys celebrating good money habits next to a hot water heater, Joe and OG.
Hey, I'm Bob Wheeler, and when I'm not talking to people about money, I'm stacking Benjamins.
Great trivia today, Doug. The fact that the lead singer of Kool and the Gang's name is actually Kool with his gang. Who knew?
Actually, that just tells you how cool his parents were. Put that on a birth certificate.
Wait, do you think his parents named him Kool or that he adopted that nickname later?
Yeah, like maybe when he was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like people just saw it in him.
They're like, he's cool. Yes.
With a K.
Big thanks to Mel Dorman for stopping by, and what a great way to help your community and help yourself at the same time. Let's do a headline.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's headlines.
Our headline today comes to us from USA Today. Of course, by now, everyone knows that about a month ago, the Fed announced a 1/4 point interest rate cut, and USA Today and everybody else reported on it. I'm not going to talk so much, though, about the quarter rate cut as the fact that, OG, this is the first time that the Fed has cut rates since late 2024. So it's been nearly a year since they've cut rates. And for a lot of people, they haven't been through this a lot. If you're a brand new stacker to this area, you read these pieces, first of all, and it says the Fed's benchmark interest rate was cut to a range of 4 to 4.25. And you're like, wait a minute, 4 to 4.25. My interest rate on my debt is still, whatever. Mortgage rates are still high. When they talk about the Fed lowering rates, can we take a few minutes today, now that the Fed says they may do it again next quarter, take a few seconds to talk about how this works and why it's important? So 4 to 4.25. What is this? What is this rate the Fed's cutting?
Well, that's the rate that the Federal Reserve charges banks for them to borrow money and for banks to lend money to one another. That's kind of their internal rate. By setting that, without getting into a macroeconomics class, that kind of sets everything else from a domino standpoint beyond that, right? If that's the rate at which banks lend to one another, or the rate at which the Federal Reserve lends to banks, so the big government sends to banks, then everything else is going to trickle down from there. And if you think about banks as they're for-profit institutions, generally speaking, so if their wholesale cost is 4.5, they're not going to retail it to you for 4.5. They're going to retail it to you for their cost plus the margin of profit and their expenses, right? So no different than any other sort of business model that's out there. There's a cost structure to make widgets, and they have their raw costs and then their operational costs, and then that's the retail price that you pay.
The important thing, stackers, to know is going to be how this affects you. And for me, knowing that underlying piece that these are banks borrowing money very quickly, short-term loans from each other, the short-term lending, that's the only thing the Fed does is controls this one little piece. And it's actually a huge piece of the system, but it is,
well, and the money supply, but
it is just one lever. Well, the Treasury's involved there. The Fed is really going to talk about the exchange between the two banks, or between all the different banks.
Touche.
Yeah. But before we get to actually the end of it, I think the next lever that means is, so these are banks that are trading money between each other to make sure that they cover what's called their capital requirement, this base of money they have to stay compliant with the banking system rules. But that means, OG, then the next domino is any loan then that goes through a bank that can be tied directly to a bank. Those are the only loans then that are truly, I guess, pound for pound affected by this. So this would be like car loans, as an example, unsecured money loans, where a bank is going to give you a signature loan or a personal loan. Like, these are the loans, I think, that are affected the most by this, right?
Yeah, everything will behave commensurate with what the costs are for the bank. So if a bank offers a credit card, which they're all tied to, banks at some point, so they're going to probably lower their lending rate by roughly 0.25%. I would suspect that car loan rates would be affected, mortgage rates would be affected somewhat similarly, although it's not uniform. But you have to remember that this is going to be for new money necessarily, not your existing. If you have a car loan at 7%,
not going to change.
Car loan's at 7%. Like, that's the deal that you signed. You can go refinance it maybe, or, your mortgage, you can go refinance it. Or if you have a variable rate mortgage, that'll adjust, when it adjusts. You more interestingly will see it in credit cards and lines of credit that are variable month to month. But even so, you just have to remember that this is not the profound, like, life altering change that that you think it might be. Like, oh my God, the interest rates went down 0.25 point. Thank God I can now afford all this extra mortgage. It does affect affordability for sure, but not like I could buy a $300,000 house and now I can buy a $700,000 house. That's not the change there. Your credit card payment might be $1,000 a month. It might be $990 now. So in aggregate, in the grand scheme of things in the entire universe, of course, $10 multiplied by everybody's credit card payment does free up some capital to the economy, which is why lowering interest rates adds stimulus, basically. But on an individual per person basis, you'll be hard pressed to notice a big difference.
I want to take that discussion and I want to bookshelf that for just a second, because I want to come back to it, because I think you build some pretty important arguments for how to use this and how not to use it that I think we're going to want to dive into in a minute. But before we get there, I just want to finish this discussion about what is directly affected, what's not directly affected. We may see, to your point, and you kind of skimmed over this a little bit, OG, we may see mortgage rates move. We may not see mortgage rates move. And that's because mortgage rates are not tied specifically to bank loans. They're tied to treasuries. And so if the treasury market moves in lockstep, which what would you say, maybe 90% of the time? I didn't do the research to find the actual number, but it's got to be about 90% of the time that you will see mortgage rates move based on the Fed move, but it's a different mechanism that does that. So this does not mean that you can refinance your mortgage because the Fed drops. But OG, if the Fed drops again next quarter, we may see lower mortgage rates that are a little bit more eye-popping than we're probably seeing right now with most banks.
Yeah, again, I think it's, is it the difference between you buying a house and not buying a house? No. Is it the difference between a house in, middle-class America and the gated community with the pool and the golf course? No. Is it going to potentially save you a few dollars, and certainly over a 30-year lifetime of mortgage payments add up? Absolutely it will. And I think what you were getting at also here is, so then what do you do with this? You just say, oh, great, this freed up $300 a month of cash flow in my mortgage calculations. Thank God I get to blow that $300 on interest to the bank to buy a bigger house. Or does that free up $300 that you can dedicate toward your savings? Does it free up, if you see an interest rate reduction, your minimum payment on your large credit card balance goes down, do you go, oh, thank God, I finally have $100 a month that I can go out to dinner on now? Or do you say, hold on, I've been paying $1,000 and now they want me to pay $900. I should still pay $1,000 and start moving this thing in the right direction for me finally, take advantage of these changes so that I can get ahead of the curve as opposed to being on the backside of it. Everybody's going to be a little different there, but I think, if you look at it from a analytics standpoint, you probably want to use this excess money for good, not for like it just floats away.
Yeah, I think there have been 3 major times that I can think of in the 15 years we've done this podcast where rates came down significantly. And of course, there's the granddaddy of them all, right? Where people were able to lock in
the Rose Bowl.
What's that?
Isn't the Rose Bowl the granddaddy of them all?
Well, So we'll call it the Rose Bowl of rate cuts, when it got to the point that you could secure a mortgage for less than 3% interest, right? And there's still a significant number of our stackers, I'm sure, that are holding on to those mortgages. But each of those 3 rate cut periods, rate drop periods that I remember, we spent a ton of time, OG, and it was so frustrating as we saw the data afterwards. People that don't listen to financial content, don't pay attention to these things as closely as I think our stacker community does. This is a great time to get your financial house in order. If you haven't paid down that high interest rate debt, to get it refinanced, but not just to refinance it, to your point. I love this point. So I can afford more. So I can go, so I could go buy another boat and finance that too, and wreck my financial picture long-term. Instead, this is the time to secure your financial future by lowering the rates, lock in lower rates, and get that debt payoff strategy going. And sure, OG, I think we're early in the game, but it sure seems to me that, well, the Fed's already said that we're probably getting another one next quarter, unless things significantly changed. And how often has that happened in the past? So I think we are getting another one. I don't like playing the crystal ball, but we might see then 3, 4, 5 of these. But regardless, God, I remember when we knew interest rates were going to come up, they were flagging interest rates are coming up, interest rates are coming up. And you and I sat here at the card table going, lock in your debt strategy, lock in your debt strategy, lock in your debt strategy. And a year later, we see that credit card balances are higher than ever. People have more debt than ever. People are starting to struggle with their money again, and just ugliness. This is a great opportunity to look at those refinances.
Yeah, if it makes sense. I think for a lot of people, waiting until December, see what the December thing is.
Agreed.
To see if there's 2, and then maybe it becomes a little bit more noticeable, because there's a cost to doing this too, whether there's a cost of mortgage refinancing or a cost of your time to shop credit cards or, do a HELOC to, all that sort of stuff. So just go slow with it, but be intentional.
I think the thing to do right now would be to put your debt strategy in place. So a lot of people have debt, but they don't have an overall debt strategy. They just have debt, and hey, I make the payment, the card comes, the payment notice comes, and so I pay it. Well, if you look at your life as if you're a business, the chief financial officer of a business is going to take the bank for the best terms they can get, and then they're going to get more strategic. So look at your interest rates. Which one's the highest? Look at your payments. So maybe, OG, if we got a few of those small payments hanging out there, maybe we tackle those small payments first to get that snowball rolling downhill.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
And then go after. I don't like the full, and this is a tired argument between the avalanche and the snowball. So the snowball is where we go low payment, next lower payment, next lower payment, and bigger payments, so that now all my money snowballed into paying off the higher one. Statistically, historically, if you follow the numbers, that's not as efficient because you're ignoring some of the high interest rate debt that's out there. Mm-hmm. But I do like, OG, how that begins for non-starters, for people that just start out. I've got a friend who's an orthopedic surgeon. He said,
Scoreboard.
Wow.
Well, he says that 2 things have helped his career. And that is CrossFit and pickleball have been huge for his career.
I was like, an orthopedic surgeon does pickleball? Like, that's a terrible thing. Oh, no. He means for staying busy at his job.
Increased sales.
Yes. And my point there is, it's because a lot of people were doing nothing and all of a sudden go to these more strenuous activities that they're not used to. Sedentary people all of a sudden doing these body motions they haven't done before. So I think when you first start out, I like this idea of get those easy wins, right? But I don't think you got to do this all the way through. When you get to the bigger stuff, well, then pay attention to interest rates and go after it. Once you know that you're moving along and the strategy's working and you're going to stick with it, I think you can be a little more efficient and flip over to the avalanche where you're attacking those high interest rates. I don't know how you feel about that, OG.
Well, I look at it from 2 sides. One is a simplifier method. So are there a bunch of $500 balances that I can whip off with a $2,500 check? And I've got 5 credit card things that I don't have to think about ever. Again, I don't have to worry about missing payments. I don't have to, it's not another line item coming on my checkbook. Like, I just simplified my life. And then I actually look at cash flow, because I'll say, where am I going to get the biggest bang for my literal buck in terms of, if I get this $20,000 credit card, and my payment is $1,100 a month, and I got a $20,000 car payment, my payment is $500 a month. And if both of these are similar interest rates, which maybe they might not be, but assuming that they are, or I've got a loan that's a $500 a month, you go, how do you choose between these? I want to take the one that's going to free up $1,100 to my cash flow. But, I've been kind of drumming on this for the last month and a half or so, but you think about that $1,100, $14,000 a year, $12,000 a year, you got to make 15, 16 grand a year just to pay the $1,100. Like, for some people, that could be 10% of your income, 15% of your income. You're making 100 grand, you got $1,000 credit card payment, 15% of your income gross, you have to make, and you get rid of that. And it's like getting a 15% pay raise. It's a huge amount of cash flow to the bottom line. So I like paying attention to the cash flow and how it's going to affect, and I guess in some way, shape, or form, that's kind of a snowball-ish method but maybe the other way of saying, like, I just freed up $1,000. I can put $500 in my savings account to build that up, and I can take $500 and put it on that loan. And now that loan's $1,000 payment, and I'm knocking that off in 2 years.
In a lot of cases, things seem really tight at first for families. And when they would come see me, they go, you know what, Joe, it's just super tight. So we'd knock a couple of those off, and all of a sudden you got a little breathing room.
Just a little
bit.
I'll
tell you though, OG, you got to then take advantage of that breathing room that you have to put systems in place. So spending that same cash flow, but putting it into your emergency fund so that the next time this happens, you don't have to go back to the credit card. Great use of that money. But so it's not just about paying it off. My frustration is I see people pay it off and immediately they get themselves into other debt. It's like, oh, guess what? I got some breathing room, so now I'm going to breathe.
I got all this available credit and finally take that trip I've been meaning to take.
It is fantastic. A two-step process. Lock down the debt strategy and make sure it never comes back. And that means as you pay off $500 a month, put that money toward your emergency fund. You get the emergency fund now flowing. Now put it toward the rest of the debt. As you knock off something else, keep building the emergency fund. Then put it toward your long-term savings. Then you're building wealth to secure your financial future. Great stuff. I'll link to this piece at stackingbenjamins.com. But even more than that, we talk about stuff like this in the 201. Kevin Bailey goes and dives into the best curated links for all of these one-on-one topics that are online. We find them all for you. stackingbenjamins.com/201 gets you there. That means we're out on the back porch, Doug. And man, the community's got a ton of stuff going on right now. What should we shine the spotlight on?
Well, we got to do it again. We got to be the wind beneath the wings of our new Seattle Stacker Meetup group. There's a new group getting started up in the Seattle area. They are meeting for the first time on October 14th at the Poodle Dog Restaurant, 7 p.m. Pacific time. That's down in Fife, Washington. Look, if you live out there, you think, man, I'm not going to Fife. It's super easy to get to. Like, even if you're up on Whidbey Island, it's like an hour and a half down there. You hop on the ferry, get yourself to Mukilteo, and you zip on down. You're up in Bremerton. It's like 48 minutes away. Find a way to get to the Poodle Dog Restaurant, October 14th, 7 o'clock. And you'll meet up with a whole bunch of like-minded trivia lovers, right? The people probably just meeting to review the trivia from the last month or two. That's reason enough.
All of our great stackers there. We also have a meetup group. The Twin Cities has a meetup group. You can find them also online. Put in Stacking Benjamins Twin Cities. This month, by the way, Stacker Mike is going to tell some of his financial story in the Twin Cities. So make sure that whether you're in Seattle or the Twin Cities, that you go attend one of the meet like-minded stackers.
Yeah. How about this? If you're not in one of those cities, form your own group.
That's a good idea. Write me, Joe at stackingbenjamins.com, and we'll help you out with that. And by the way, the Twin Cities meetup is happening October 15th at 6:30 at Davani's, Davanni. That's in St. Paul, 41 Cleveland Avenue South, St. Paul. So Mike's going to tell his money journey. And our friend Chris Luger from Heavy Metal Money, who is one of our coordinators there, Chris and Veronica and Mike. Chris has it as a scary story. So apparently Mike's going to tell a scary money journey for October.
When the groups get big enough, you guys fly me out there, right?
We should.
Each of the groups?
I think we need to.
We will for sure maybe do that.
A star appearance. Yeah. Yeah. Is this like, OG, when we say, ask your mom? Because whenever my mom said, ask your dad, I was like, that's a no. That's like the biggest lie. Or how about this? I'll think about it. When mom said, I'll think about it, you're like, okay, that's the kiss of death.
We've also got a review that we can talk about quickly, Joe. I don't really know what this title means, but I think maybe DJ Kimber was just gamifying just playing the system because they knew I would read this because the title of this review says, Doug brings the A-team face to investing. I don't know what that means. Am I like Hannibal? Do I look like Hannibal from the old A-team?
No, I think you look like
Is it
Mr.
like
T.
an O-face?
You look like Mr. T.
I look like Mr. T.
Maybe your face.
Yeah, maybe. That was a character in the show. I'm with you now, OG. I gotcha. Anyway, DJ Kimber said, good investment podcast. Each host brings a different view of how they approach investment and goals. If you're going to listen to one, listen to this one.
Wow. Fantastic.
Short and sweet.
Thank you for those words. If you leave us a review like that, and you are also looking for good financial reads, I can't keep all these books in mom's basement. So write to me, joe@stackingbenjamins.com. And it might be a little while for those people that don't know my house renovation horror story here in October. When I can find my books again, I will send you one. Right now, everything is boxed up down here in mom's basement. It's a little ugly. One more thing, which is tonight, speaking of horror stories, a lot of people think the FAFSA is a horror story. Our friend Robert Farrington from the College Investor website joins me to dive into how the FAFSA works. That's 5:30 Pacific, or as Doug says, Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern, stackingbenjamins.com/FAFSA to sign up. It's going to be live on YouTube. Robert and I diving into, for about an hour, we're going to teach you about how the FAFSA works and get that blood pressure down so you can just attack this thing. The college financial aid is first come, first serve. So you want to get that in ASAP so that you're able to, more easily afford college. So stackingbenjamins.com/FAFSA. That's it for the back porch. By the way, coming up on Friday, Sean Mullaney going to join us to talk about planning for early retirement. We talked about planning your interest rates and your debt strategy today. We talked about real estate today. On Monday, we dove into all kinds of nuggets, financial planning nuggets from Jonathan Clements. Well, on Friday, we put that all together. If you want to use all that to retire early, Sean Mullaney joining OG and Paula and Doug and I on the roundtable. All right, Doug, what's our top 3 takeaways from today's show?
Well, Joe, first, take some advice from Mel Dorman. Want to help yourself and maybe help your community at the same time? As legendary motivational speaker Zig Ziglar famously said, those who spend their time helping others help themselves. Second, interest rates lower? While that's bad news for your savings account, that could help you with your debt struggles. Create a get-out-of-debt strategy and get those interest rates lower. But the big lesson? Joe's mom knows celebration more than anyone. She's always celebrating that fat Social Security check hitting her account. We're going to have a good time tonight. This is Joe's mom singing, "Let's celebrate with Social Security." It's kind of got a ring to it, Ma. I like it.
We're going to celebrate with Social Security. I wonder why that didn't go to number one.
A good time tonight with our hip replacements. Thanks to Mel Dorman for joining us. You'll find Mel's TEDx talk on our show notes and her book on seller financing, Bank Your Neighbor, a people-first real estate strategy to build wealth together wherever books are sold. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2025, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. Joe gets help from a few of our neighborhood friends. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamins Show. There's a party going on right here. Celebration.